Hey, and welcome to the 24th GameDev Meetup. My name is Steve, and with me in the stream, as always, is Falk and Valentin. Say hi, for both of you. And yeah, we're happy to have you here. And yeah, we three are the organizers of the GameDev Meetup, if you don't know us. And as always, Ronnie in the background is in charge of the recording. Yeah, as you have noticed, this time we speak English, or I speak English, and we will speak English too. The reason for this today is our interview guest, Scott, with whom is the interview. During the interview, you can, as always, ask questions in Discord or via YouTube, and we will ask these questions in the interview at a suitable place or at the end if it's not suitable. And after the interview, as always too, we meet again in the Discord, and there you can talk to Scott, ask some questions you haven't asked in the stream, or just chat with him, or just to hang out and chat with the others. So come to our Discord server. We would happy to have you there. And now I would hand over to Valentin, who will lead the interview with Scott.
Yeah, hello everybody. In today's topic, we are going to talk about the game publishing business today. And if there's not really a lot of positive things you can say about the coronavirus, but maybe it's just this, that we have the possibility to have an international guest, our first international guest on our GameDev Meetup Leipzig here today. And it's Scott Millard from Poland, and he is Managing Director of Fear Dynamic, which is a game publishing company in Poland. Scott, say hi.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thanks very much for inviting me, and it's been a while, and I'm since I've been in Leipzig, and it's great to be back, well, virtually anyway. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for taking the time here to share some knowledge about the game publishing industry. And why don't you just introduce yourselves? And not everybody may have heard of Feardemic and what you're doing. So just say a few words about yourself, your company, what you're doing, and how you got there.
Yeah. Okay. So Feardemic is a games publisher based in Poland, and we are part of the Bloober Team group. So we're actually the publishing wing of Bloober Team, and Bloober Team you probably know from Blair Witch, Layers of Fear. We have Medium coming up on the I think it's the 10th of December. Feardemic has its own roster, but like Bloober Team, we specialize specifically in horror games. So we have one single vertical that we specialize in. I personally have been in the games industry pretty much most of my life, for almost 20 years now, and that's been with major publishers. I started my career with Sega, and that was purchased by Infogrames, who then changed their name to Atari, and then became Namco Bandai. And when I left Namco Bandai, I was managing director of Southeast Asia and Korea. And I then worked with companies like Bethesda in doing distribution for Skyrim and Rage and Elder Scrolls Online throughout Asia, and eventually found myself in Poland, where I hooked up with Bloober Team to start working on Feardemic and building it out and building the portfolio of products that we have to publish. So that's my story in a nutshell. But I know you don't really want to hear about my story. You want to ask me about game publishing and what I can share with your community.
Absolutely, but that's quite a career, quite a history you got there, and so we are very, very happy to have you here today. So you are kind of an expert on the publishing business, and I think it's very nice for our community to have really some information out of first hand from our pro. Let's cover the basics first, maybe. Mm-hmm. I think because I think not everybody knows this. Maybe the word publisher is always hanging around the game industry, but not everybody knows what is exactly a publisher. What does he do? What services does a publisher provide? What's a publisher?
Okay, well, there's two lanes here of publishing. Traditionally, and the publishing that has been around for a long time is the management of intellectual property. And for games developers or most games publishers like the Bethesdas, the Namco Bandais, the Ataris, they develop their own intellectual property. They manage their own brands and build out their own games, and then publish them into various sales channels. So, and it hasn't changed at all. I mean, companies like Activision, I mean, they develop their own IP, they own the studios, they take them from concept all the way through to market and deliver them to the end user. The type of publishing that we're probably going to talk about today is slightly different to that. It's the independent side, and it's like when developers go to game shows and they're looking for a publisher, and they come across a publisher, and the publisher says, well, we can do this, that for you, etc., in exchange for the share of your revenue. It is called publishing, but really it's closer to distribution, and that's what we'll talk about today, because I know your community is interested in the more independent development, and certainly for Feardemic, that's how we structure our deals. We do have some IP that we own that we are developing, but mainly we sort of enter into publishing / distribution deals where we don't actually own the IP. We provide that sort of last mile service of marketing and sales. So I hope that makes sense. So the two different types of publishing.
Absolutely. So if we're talking about distribution, as you already mentioned, that's probably the part that most of our indie game developers are interested in. So what kind of publishing distribution services are these? What kind of services are there connected with the distribution?
Yeah, so generally, I mean, the main job, I mean, if you think about development, right, and game developers tend to be a whole group of specialists that are all working together on the common goal or a common vision of a game. Game publishing and the people that work in game publishing tend to be real generalists, right? They tend to know a little bit about everything, but the services that they provide is marketing and sales, as well as some last mile technical services, such as whether it be QA, porting, those types of services that sort of usually come towards the end of the game development cycles. But most importantly, it's marketing and it's sales. Now, I think one of the questions I hear all the time from developers is, well, what do I need a publisher for? I can do it. I can put my game on Steam. I can port my own game and put it on Xbox Live, or I could put it on the PlayStation Store. I can do all that myself, and you can, and a lot of people do, and a lot of people do it successfully. But what you should be looking for in a publisher is a partner that can help you with all that stuff. Now, I'll give you an example. I have two guys that work full-time for me, and they do programmatic marketing. They essentially target customer groups, build mailing lists, and make sure our games are getting in front of as many people as possible. Now, they do that every day. Now, I have in my pipeline 5 games, and this quarter we'll be announcing a whole lot more, and over the next couple of years, that pipeline will grow and grow and grow. And so every day, my team of programmatic guys get much better at targeting the end user or targeting potential customers of a particular game type. And that's the service that a publisher provides. I mean, if you're a developer and you are publishing your first game, and you've never targeted audiences before, you've never dealt with PR organizations before, you've never done dealt with influencers before, you've never negotiated publicity deals with Microsoft or Sony or whomever, it's really tough. It's not a walk-up start. It's not super easy. So to have people on your side that have experience doing that and can execute that for you is going to sort of help you achieve a better sales rate or a better outcome for your game. And at the end of the day, I mean, that's what it's all about, right? If you do it if you do it by yourself, then your outcome might be X. If you do it with a publishing partner, then hopefully your outcome might be 2X or 3X. So, and hence why you're sharing revenue. But one of the things I will say is this type of publishing deal where you do work with a publisher in partnership and mainly on distribution. I mean, most publishers, well, certainly, we don't, they should not and don't ask for your IP. The IP belongs to you, belongs to the studio and the developer. They may have an option on that IP, but generally, when I say option on the next game. So if that game is a success and the developer wants to make another one, that publisher may have an option to say, yeah, I want to publish that game because it was key to that game being successful. But generally, the IP stays with the developer. It does not transfer to the publisher and should not transfer to the publisher.
Just to be clear, because not everybody knows it, maybe IP, you mean intellectual property?
The intellectual property. Yeah. I mean, essentially the rights to the game.
Yeah. All right, this makes totally sense to me, because I think everybody who already tried to monitor a social media channel or something like that to reach a certain audience just knows how difficult it is really and how time consuming. So having an expert by my hand is really a handy thing. But this is the distribution part of things. Is there also the possibility that a publisher funds a project? So if I can come with my idea to a publisher, hey, I want to program this game. This is the idea. This is my team. I've already set everything up, but I need, I don't know, $150,000 to produce the game. Is this also a thing a publisher does, fund productions?
It does. I mean, they do, and I say sometimes they do. I mean, I have, we have, we also haven't. And it's really dependent on the situation. But I will say this: one of the sort of pitfalls of the whole finding a publisher to fund your game. One of the big pitfalls is when they give you that 100,000 or that 200,000. It can do a couple of things. Well, the first thing is realizing what that money is for or where that money comes from. That is coming from an advance against sales. So when you get 150,000 or 200,000 to finish your game or to finish your vision from the publisher, that's a recoupable advance against sales. So you have to pay it back, and and that's the gamble on the publisher's side. Is like, well, can we make that back? Well, sometimes it's the best guess, sometimes it's just some estimates, but. And the other thing that can happen, and this is perhaps a warning, it can change the publisher into a client rather than a partner. Now, I say that because what will happen is that advance will get given to the studio and it will get drawn down against milestones. And the relationship may change. And I've seen this happen where suddenly the developer sees the publisher like a client. And so their main focus is reaching those milestones to get paid. So that can change the entire dynamic of everything. So, and you really, really want to avoid that. And, I know I've seen it happen in the past where you have the game developers, over the course of the 12 months where that game is being made, they start to sort of listen to what the publisher's saying as being information from a client. The client saying, I think I might want to move that rock over there. And so the developer hears and goes, I have to move that rock over there because the publishers asked for it. And that's kind of like this sort of advertising agency relationship. It's sort of like I want to make an ad or make something, and the agency just goes out and does it because the client is always right. But in the world of game development, every game needs a artistic vision, and once the publisher starts sort of suggesting things, and they will suggest that stuff. There's absolutely, I mean, you just can't help but suggesting things. The developer can either say, no, that's not part of my vision, and my vision, I'm sticking with it, or they hear from the publisher is like, that's what the client wants, and I will do it. And it can twist the whole project around, and it can become a big mess. And it's not just in the independent sphere as well. It happens with bigger publishers. I mean, a great example of that would be Bethesda and Prey 2. They had a developer that just didn't work out. So it happens to the best intentioned projects. So I would suggest to any developer that has their own IP, has their own idea, has their own sort of vision for a game, is try not to look to a publisher for an advance to finish that game. Look for people to invest in your studio. And if those people invest in your studio, They're investing in your idea. They're investing in the idea. They're partners in the execution of that idea, and they will not become your clients. And then you finish your game, and then now it's time to look for a publisher. And so you're not really sort of, you have much more leverage on your side when it comes to revenue share. And you know exactly what you're looking for when you go to a publisher. I want someone to help me with the bits that I don't have experience in. And that is marketing, finding the right influencers, finding the right audience, getting my game in the media, getting it on YouTube, getting it wherever it needs to be, because that's the sort of the value the publisher brings. If that relationship changes to client relationship, well, you'll end up with a muddled mess as a game. And it's happened to me, absolutely. That's how I know.
That's a very good advice, because I think everybody can relate to that, because as soon as there's money involved, even if it's just with friends or something like that, the relationship kind of changed, because this somebody who gave you money just kind of got the right to say something now, because he gives you money. And that's a very interesting point, which leads me to another thing. Let's say I have a publisher, but he's not funding my game. He's really just doing what a publisher is supposed to do with the distribution aspects of the game. How much say does he have in the project, like how it's marketed, how, for example, if we look at an author, a writer who's writing a book, and say about the book cover, which will be distributed later on. There's the whole publisher has only the say in the book cover, for example. Is there something similar in the games industry? How much say has the publisher in this game marketing?
Well, they will have a lot of say, because they will be sort of executing it, and they will sort of use their experience as a sort of a guideline. But at the end of the day, all the all the materials that are used, whether it be the key art, whether it be the capsule on Steam, whether it be the dialogue, all has to be signed off by the IP owner. And that IP owner is always going to be the developer. Sorry, it's a bit noisy here. I'm sorry. But anyway, so it always has to be signed off by the IP owner. So the IP owner is always going to have say at the end of the day. But it is just good practice, and it's not necessarily the publisher. There is a lot of services out there that provide silent reviews or mock reviews or feedback on the development at various stages. And this is really, really important, and I would recommend this to anybody who's developing a game. So once you get to the vertical slice stage, you are going to have this artistic vision. You're going to think this is the game I've been trying to make all my life, and you're going to be blinded by it. You are going to look at it from one perspective. So it's really good at various different stages of the game, and you can work with this via your publisher or do it directly. Is to find companies like in Poland, there's one called Try Evidence, which essentially take your game build and will farm it out to various reviewers around the world, and they will, depending on the size of the scope of the report you want back, but they'll literally just pick it apart for you and do a SWOT analysis on it and say, okay, these are the really good things. These are the mechanics that are really sticky. These are the ones that are really weak, and these are the ones that could do with improvement. And they'll also give you like some feedback and some ideas as well. And you can take that feedback and go back and sort of look at it and take from it what you may. But it's important to do it. You can just do it once, or you can do it a few times. And sometimes I would recommend doing it as many times within the development cycle as you can, because best intention, implementation of ideas sometimes doesn't translate as well as you think it might be, and then it's good to have someone else look at it again and give you some feedback all the way along. It's kind of these days, especially because there's so much riding on this. I mean, you're really you're talking about at minimum 2 years work. And certainly in the case of Cyberpunk with CD Projekt, I mean, a decade's work. So it's really important to get it right, and to go out and find people that can provide those services is really important. So to answer your question, how much influence is the publisher going to have? Well, they're going to have their say inevitably. They're going to, the fact that they're involved with you clearly means that they know that they like the project, that they really see something positive in the project. But it's always good to get as much feedback as you can, and I'm sure most people in the publishing business would encourage that as well, to understand what the sort of strengths and weaknesses of the project are.
The feedback kind of sounds very interesting, because when do you have the possibility to get a really broad feedback from a broad audience? But it sounds like that a publisher has to be brought on this project early on in the development cycle, so that there is enough time to change certain aspects of the game depending on the feedback. Let's say the game is completely done, then you reach out to a publisher, let your game get tested and get some feedback, and they say, okay, this is not working, and you have to kind of redo the whole game. I don't think that's really economic in that way. So how early on should you bring a publisher onto your game project to get, for example, these feedback cycles that they are really useful to your project?
Well, I mean, again, the earlier the involvement you have with a publisher, the better. But, again, it's really difficult from a publisher's perspective to sort of see something in its early stages and understand whether or not it's going to be successful. There's kind of... So from a publisher's perspective, it's really hard to commit to a developer in the early stages unless it's something, really, really obvious. I mean, obvious by the number 2 in a series, or number 3 in a really successful series, where that it's going to sell like hotcakes. But if it's a brand new IP that's never been tried or tested before, then it's really, really hard to tell at early stages. But there's nothing to prevent the developer seeking constructive feedback of his project from third parties, early on. As I said, I mean, Try Evidence is one that a lot of the Polish game developers use here in Poland, and I know there's a few of other companies like that around the world that provide feedback and consulting services. And they're not necessarily really... They can be expensive if the scope of the project is big, but if it's a sort of a vertical slice and you want, feedback on it, you can get it done quite reasonably. And worst case scenario, I'm sure you can always find journalists or people that have a lot of experience in the games business to give you silent reviews of your vertical slice or of your product.
All right. You said it's kind of difficult for a publisher to jump onto a project early on if it's completely unknown title, unknown series. How likely is it to get a publisher to work on my project? Say, I just recently founded indie development game studio, and this is my first title I'm working on. So I don't have credits, I don't have any titles shipped. How likely is it to find a publisher? Even let's say the game is already done and I can really show him demos and I really can show him the full game, the full gameplay, and it's awesome, it looks great, but I'm a completely new fish in the tank. I have no credits, I have no game published whatsoever. How likely is it to find a publisher in this kind of stage?
If the game is good, and all the ingredients are there, the mechanics, and and people can feel it and go, wow, yeah, I understand what you're trying to do here. And, it could be a vertical slice. And I mean, stranger things have happened. But, on the other hand, there's a lot of venture capital firms out there that sort of, fund projects and fund companies. And, they always will tell you, we only fund hits. But, I mean, if you ever meet anyone that tells you that they can see a hit, they're a liar. I'll tell you right now. I mean, they're so hard to spot. I mean, I think Fortnite was considered a long shot when it was sort of ported into a multiplayer from a single play version, and certainly EA weren't knocking on Fall Guys' door when it launched. It really is hard. But I mean, I suppose what that sort of that hurdle or that sort of roadblock of sort of not being able to know or not being able to sort of understand what the recipe is for a really successful game is what makes this industry so damn exciting, because you can literally go from zero to hero, from hero to zero in one cycle. So this is why we're here. It's that thrill of like not really knowing. You can feel it. You can see that, okay, there's that sort of X factor about this particular game or this particular product, but I can't put my finger on what it is, and it's really hard to explain to people. But you'll know exactly, 6 hours after you release it, whether or not it's going to work or not, and whether or not your feeling was right. And that's what we kind of all pile in for. That sort of, that sort of intense feeling of like, yes, it's going to be big, it's going to be big, it's going to be big, release, and then wait and see, and then it's not, and you go, oh gosh. But on the other hand, it works the other way. You can sort of think, this is a real long shot. I don't know whether this is going to work. Press release, go to bed, wake up in the morning, and be pleasantly surprised that you've sold 30,000 copies of it. So again, this is all kind of part of it. There's no rules in this business. You can be someone with no track record, with no experience. You could just be a good programmer with a great idea in the right place at the right time, and bang, you're there. On the other hand, you could be someone with a lot of experience and a lot of experience under your belt, and you still may not be able to sort of find an audience to engage with. There's no real rules, and I suppose the only thing that you can do is just get out there, stick your game in front of as many people as possible, and see who is going to sort of put their hand up and say, hey, I see what you're trying to do here, and I'm willing to help you.
That's nice. So there's, as you said, there's kind of unpredictable factor to this. So there's also the possibility that you can make it as a newly founded studio with no credits and whatsoever. Are there maybe some things you can do to make it more likely that a publisher is hooked to your idea? Should the game be already done or almost done, so that there's as much gameplay to see? Because I think just convincing a publisher with maybe a concept or a game document will not maybe shoot the right message. So maybe you need more gameplay, more footage, real actually footage, or is there anything else you can do in the first place to make your game more likely for a publisher to be interested in?
Yeah, so, as much, I know I said before, the earlier you get involved with the publisher, sometimes it's better, but from a publisher's perspective, and if you think, and I suppose their function sort of kind of gives this away, the thing that they provide is marketing and sales services. And their sales tends to be on a year-to-year basis. If you go to them with the product that you can be delivered within their financial year, they will be listening. If you go to them and say, well, the product will be ready in 2024, they will be staring out the window going, I wonder when the next meeting is going to be on. And that's probably got nothing to do with the developer or with you presenting. It's just the fact that they're so focused on a short-term outcome before they're focused on a longer-term outcome. And that's just kind of reality. And I mean, I see that I was speaking with some venture capitalists the other day, and literally they were looking for projects to invest in, and they had to be small companies. But the whole spiel was that we want to get in early, and then we want to help them develop and then help them execute. But when push came to shove, they started looking at which ones are closest to release, which ones are closest to the revenue stream, and that's just kind of the reality of it. So for a developer, it's also really, really hard as well to understand what publishers are doing, because publishers have their own goals. And that goal, I mean, for me personally, I'm looking at 2021 now and trying to fill up our pipeline of products so that my guys have got something to work on every month during the year of 2021. And that's all I'm focused on. and I know what my budget is, and I'm hunting around looking for those things. But someone might come to me with a really, really good idea that might be available in 2024, and I'm like, well, okay, I'll just put it on the back burner, and I can't commit to it because they don't know what my responsibilities are and what people that employ me or the shareholders of Bloober Team are sort of expecting from me. So it's kind of it's also like raising money as well. When you walk into a venture capital firm, you don't really know whether they have money or not. They of course they're going to say, yeah, we've got all these funds we're looking after and everything, and it's like, yeah, okay, but are those funds open or are they closed? Have you already allocated the money or not? They're never going to tell you that because they want to hear your idea in case it is really good in the next Twitter or Facebook. But you really don't know. So again, I mean, it's a lot of timing. The thing that I recommend to most people is just again, make as much as you can yourself. Look for people to invest in your studio and your idea as opposed to publishers advancing you cash. And get out there and talk to as many people as possible and look for somebody who believes in your product the same way you do with the same amount of passion, the same amount of excitement that you do. And if you can do that, well then you're onto something. You've got a team because you can't do it by yourself.
Makes totally sense. Publishers also just a business who needs to make which needs to make money and to make a living for the employees. So of course they also think which game is close to release, so we can also get some revenues. Which takes to the question, revenues. What is this exactly in for a publisher when he's signing up a game? For example, let's say I've developed an indie game and I'm coming to you and present it to you, and you say, yeah, fine, let's do this. We do the distribution for you and we do the sales for you. What's in it for you? So what is it that you get money-wise out of the project? Is it a share from the sales? I have to pay you a fee monthly, or how is it working?
No. I mean, usually, if we take on a project that say, for example, we don't give them an advance against sales, then we take in the money and we split the money into an agreed percentage. We take anywhere between 30 to 50%, depending on what it is that we're doing and what sort of feels appropriate. And then we split the money and give the amount to the developer that they get, and we keep the amount that we keep. Things like marketing and technical costs tend to be recoupable, so they will get recouped first. But generally, we just split it. If there has been an advance against sales, well, then we recoup that first before we start, giving money to developers. And yeah, so I mean, it's not really, you don't pay in advance for publishing services. Really, it is kind of like a commercial marriage that you sort of undertake. You're both in it together. You both have a stake in the outcome, and you work together to achieve that outcome.
All right. So the money flows through the publishing company, and then you split it up, and a part goes to developer, a part stays at your company.
Yeah, I mean, essentially, again, as part of the sales and marketing function, the publisher also takes over all the administrative functions. So the income that comes from Steam, the income that comes through Microsoft, PlayStation, Nintendo, all the independent developers, all the independent distribution channels, such as Green Man or Humble, it all comes back to the publisher. The publisher splits it all up, allocates it to wherever it needs to be, and then pays it through to the developer.
Nice. So I think we learned a lot now what a publisher actually does, but the question is, I think a lot of people ask themselves, how do I get in contact with a publisher? Where do I find a publisher? I think there are a lot of publishers which in different tiers. Some do AAA titles, some do some indie games. Where can I find a publisher that's suitable for my game, that's really on the same level, we're on the same page, this is the right publisher for my needs, for the level of game that I have to present. For example, let's stick with the indie game development company. Where can I find a publisher that's suited for my game? Do I go to trade shows? Do I just Google? Or is there maybe a database somewhere online where I can kind of sort publishers and find them? Where do I find a publisher?
Well, strange you should ask that, because one of our partners, Unfold Games, who are the developer of Dark, they recently distributed, I mean, literally in the last couple of days, a list of 32 games publishers that you can reach out to and contact. And I'll try and find that link actually, and I'll share it with you guys after this talk, so you can circulate it amongst your members. So that's 32 different independent games publishers all around the world that are inevitably always looking for games to publish or distribute. In the case of Feardemic, we specialize only in horror games. Of course, our scope of horror games is quite wide. I mean, you know, if you think about horror, it sort of spans not only just you know, the hardcore sort of hack slash sort of Resident Evil type games, but also you know IP that's targeted at kids, such as Monster High or those types of things. So it all sort of falls within the remit of horror. And the reason why we sort of focused on one vertical is that it is sort of kind of been the whole group, or the Bloober team group's philosophy that the consumers of horror are going to be interested in lots of different horror. And so if we can build a community around our portfolio, we can take that audience with us to every new game that we release. And certainly, I mean, over the past sort of 6 months, we've been very aggressively building mailing lists and building subscriber lists, our own community, if you like, around Feardemic, of, you know, people that are interested in the horror genre. And so therefore, if you are a developer of horror games and you want to have you know, access to a group of consumers or a group of end users that are really going to be interested in that product, well then, you know, a company like Feardemic is probably a good idea. If you know, if you came to us with Fall Guys, we'd probably go, what a great game, but really not for us. But so you know, it really kind of depends on what that game, the type of game is. Some publishers are better at one particular genre than the other. So, you know, again, look around, make some decisions based on where you think your game will fit the best. And if you think that it will fit the best in this particular publisher, there's a fair chance that they might agree with you.
That's a nice question right there. How do I know if the publisher fits me? Because I think there will maybe also be some black sheeps in the publishing industry. How can I distinguish a good publisher from a bad publisher? I think I don't know if I'm maybe too judgy, but I guess there are some publishers who do very little marketing for your game, just take your money and sit on their asses, kind of. How is it possible to determine in the first place if the publisher is really determined to really push my game, and that is really a good publisher? Are there some criteria how to see if a publisher is really a good fit for me?
Yeah, look, again, it's a really difficult question to answer, because, you know, again, it all comes down to personal relationships. And, you know, I've seen horror stories from major publishers that, you know, are in the big five, and developers have worked with those publishers and, you know, hated every moment of it and won't speak to them again, and you know, think that, you know, that they're lucky to get out of there alive. On the other hand, I've seen, you know, people work with just one-man developers and one-man publishers and gone, wow, the experience was fantastic. He worked so hard for us. It's really hard to say. And when you sort of enter into that publisher-developer relationship, it really is kind of like a commercial marriage. You know, you've got a contract that outlines how you're married, how long you're married for, and, you know, technically you're stuck. and you're going to have disagreements within that period. Absolutely. There's always going to be a situation, of like, oh man, it was a hit when it left my desk. I don't know what happened to it. It was, going to be huge. And then that's just a real thing that happens. People sort of, really can believe so much in their game. Publishers can believe so much in the game. They can put it out there, and suddenly it hits the market, and the market says otherwise. The market says it's not a good game, or it's not a game for now. And then the finger pointing starts, because again, there was money, there was money there at the beginning, and now the money's not there. So, look, it's impossible to say. And of course, you can say, well, the best publishers are the ones with the most money, but that is not always the case. Obviously, it's good to have a publishing partner that does have, does have a solid financial foundation, that maybe a public company, or maybe part of a bigger group, but at the end of the day, it's going to come down to personal relationship and how much they believe in your game, how much you believe that they can help you, and how you get along and how you communicate during that whole process. And and I know sometimes it's too late after the agreement's been signed. Sometimes it's too late. You can't get out of it. You've signed the agreement now. So again, if you do come across a publisher that you think is going to be good for your game, and I know it's harder now because of this pandemic, but take the time, spend some time with them. Also on a personal basis, get on Skype, talk to them for 3 hours about what their experiences are, what they like to do, who they are as a person, because that is going to reveal itself to you at some stage anyway, and you want it to be before you sign an agreement rather than after.
Yeah, I have to admit it was kind of a tricky question, but I just wanted to ask you. But yeah, as you mentioned, there is no formula which you can apply to find out if this is a good publisher or a bad publisher. In the end, it all comes down to a personal connection. My game is my baby, and I really want to be represented in the right way. So we just have to get to know each other and see if we are a good fit. And maybe it's a good idea not to jump on the first boat, but to get in contact with many publishers and really see which one I have the best vibes with, maybe.
Yeah. I mean, it's as kind of easy as that, I suppose. But don't be surprised as well. I mean, you can reach out to the 32 publishers on the Unfold list, and you may never get a response as well. I mean, those publishers have their own sort of plan about what they want to do or what they're trying to do, and they're looking for games as well that fit what they want. And you may come along at a time that you don't fit exactly into what their plan is. But again, the good thing is, as we discussed earlier, you don't really need a publisher. A publisher can help you to achieve some penetration, or some marketing penetration, some sales penetration at the end of the day. But you don't really need them. The system is set up so that you can actually do it yourself if you need be. And I do know a lot of people that have done it themselves and have done very, very well out of it. They have, through a combination of their own marketing skills and their own personable skills with managing a community, been able to sort of sell a lot of units of their game, and made a lot of money out of it. And from there, they've been able to leverage a better deal with any publisher that they have. I mean, and because at some point, a publisher is going to be useful to you. If you already have a successful game, you have much more leverage when you're talking to them, as opposed to having an unknown IP.
Yeah, I guess there is no right way. You just have to find out if you want to do it all by yourself, or if you want the help of some professional, or if you maybe have even the money to pay someone. If there is no money involved, then you can pay a publisher, maybe then doing it all by yourself, the only option you have. But Speaking of getting in touch with a publisher, how do I approach a publisher? Just write an email, hey, this is my game, I'm looking for a publisher, are you maybe interested? Or do I give them a phone call? Let's say I write them an email, what should I include? Should there be also a gameplay video trailer? Should I include a game development document or images, screenshots? How to get in contact, and what information should I provide a publisher in the first place?
Well, I think a pitch deck is sort of, important, because I mean, and literally every pitch deck that I've ever got, you go straight to the last page and find out how much money they want. So, make sure you include that and what it is that you want, or if you want, just marketing support, if it's, expertise that you're after, technical expertise in QA or localization or porting. So be clear exactly what it is that you're after. And, as I say to everybody, we're in this sort of video generation, and unless you provide a video asset, it's pointless. You have to be able to provide a video asset, and that video asset doesn't necessarily need to be like a blockbuster trailer. It could be gameplay. It could be some gameplay concepts with the developers talking about their game, but there has to be some sort of visual element to it. I think now, we were talking about it the other day, just as far as press releases, you cannot send a press release without a video now. I mean, it won't even get printed in a sort of or posted in an internet sort of forum unless there's a video that goes with it. So, there has to be some type of video. I don't think there necessarily needs to be a vertical slice, because, again, a lot of people will make their judgment or value judgment based on, the pitch deck and based on what, the 3-minute video that they see. That's the most important thing.
Do publishers invite a company, a game development company, to their offices to do a real pitch in person, or is really just the pitch deck that I sent them, the pitch itself already?
Look, if you're heading over to, I mean, I doubt very much that you'll be doing that these days. Maybe in a few years' time, but back a year ago when things were normal, if you got invited to the publisher's office, it was usually, you were invited on a date. So, and I think, when it comes to sort of, publishers looking for product, I mean, I always am looking, and most of the stuff that we have found has literally been through us hunting and surfing and finding things and reaching out. That's the primary way that we find stuff. Very rarely do things kind of just turn up, and realistically, if they do, there's a good chance we'll sort of, pass over it and go, not really. It's a funny thing about human beings. We like to discover stuff, and publishers are no different. It's sort of kind of a sort of, part of the human experience. So we like to go out hunting. We like to find something and think that we were the only people that saw it, and then reach out and find the developer ourselves. And in a lot of cases, I mean, personally, I know a lot of cases, I have sent emails to people, and I've never got responses. Hundreds of emails to different developers, and I've never ever got a response. It could be that it's gone to junk, but it works both ways. So if you don't get a response from a publisher, it's probably likely they haven't got a response from several developers that they've reached out to as well. So don't feel bad about it.
So that's an interesting point. So the publishers go hunt themselves for games. It's not like that the game developers reach out for the publisher and present their games, and the publishers just pick the cherries, the best games they want. It's more like the publishers hunt for themselves. Yeah,
look, so in Poland, like there is in Germany, there's a whole bunch of Facebook groups for developers, and there's Facebook groups for developers in the US. They're everywhere, all over the world, right? And in the members of those groups, there's all the publishers. They're absolutely there, and they're always looking through those things. So if you're constantly posting, small videos or snippets about your game, and creating a buzz within the sort of those forums and those development forums, there's a fair chance, probably a damn good chance, that someone from a publisher is seeing those. And, if they're getting a reaction there, the publishers will jump on it and reach out to you. And that's the sort of outcome you want. You want to sort of, as a developer, you want publishers coming to you rather than the other way around. Because if you go to them, it's a bit of a cap in hand experience. But if they're coming to you, it changes the dynamic of the conversation.
So would you say it's more helpful to really be active in these communities online, share your project, share your work in progress, and then really reaching out specifically for a publisher, that it's really more likely that a publisher approaches me if I just feed all these social media channels than really putting together a pitch and present it to a publisher?
Yeah, and look, I mean, have the pitch ready and by all means send the pitches, but, there's a fair chance that those pitches won't get looked at, they'll get overlooked. But what can happen is, again, the publisher will see a snippet or see a screenshot or see a small video in a community site somewhere, a developers group, and go, wow, that looks really interesting, and then reach out or think, oh, hang on, I think I remember seeing a pitch about this, and then put two and two together and reach out. I'll give you an example, right? So there's an indie development group in Europe, and that I'm a member, and I was looking through Facebook and I saw this work in progress sort of small video of this sort of platformer game, and it looked great. It looked really, really good, and there was lots of likes and lots of comments, and I went, wow, this is really cool. So I reached out, and it turned out to be a developer in Israel, and they said, oh no, so we've already signed a publishing agreement with a company in the US, and rather than sort of say, oh, we've already got a publishing deal, we don't need you, they said, well, hey, why don't you talk to our publisher? And so I ended up talking to their publisher, had a great conversation with them, and interestingly enough, they said to me that they had two games that they were working with at the moment, and one with these guys in Israel, and these guys were a bunch of students that literally it was their first game, but they were so excited about it. They were posting stuff everywhere. They built this enormous wish list on Steam because all their friends know about it, and they were so active. But on the other hand, they had this other game that was being developed by a whole bunch of guys that who'd been in the industry for ages, who were my age, and they were absolute experts. They knew exactly what they were doing, but they didn't have any wish lists. They didn't have any, any sort of community around their game or their ideas, simply because they weren't engaged with social media. And that was an interesting sort of comparison, because I've seen that as well in with our games, in that if the developer is sort of really kind of engaged with a community and really is excited and shares as much as they can about their product, they'll build this sort of following with their game and around their idea, which will sort of attract publishers and people to them. Whereas if you're not so engaged and you're not so you're not part of the TikTok generation such as me, it's very hard for me to kind of do that. I may know exactly what I'm doing, but it's going to be very, very hard for me and more expensive for me to find an audience than it is going to be for a younger developer with that's sort of more engaged with a community or what's the various different indie communities. So in answer to your question, get active with as many independent developer communities as you possibly can, and post cool content, and people will come to you.
Nice. I wouldn't have thought about that myself, to be honest, but interesting example with this two game project who had a different approach on how to really social marketing their game. But let's say we have a company who is not so into social media and wants to do a classical pitch to a game publisher. How should this pitch be structured? What kind of pitch should it be? You said earlier this pitch document. What should be in there? What's the way to pitch your project to a publisher? How would
there's some really good examples of pitch decks out there. I mean, you just have to hunt around on the internet and you can find them. But generally, publisher wants to know what the synopsis of the game is, what the protagonist is, what the antagonist is, what the game mechanic is, and what is the game a mix of? Because there's always usually a cross statement which developers will make about their game. Is it sort of like Silent Hill X Resident Evil X Fall Guys, or is it a blend of these three mechanics? So that cross statement is very, very important, because it sort of kind of I suppose allows the publisher or the potential partner to sort of think, oh, okay, I understand, where it sort of kind of fits together and how it could be positioned. And the second one is the experience of the team, of course, the team behind it, who's making it, what experience that they've had. And I know that sort of flies in the face of what I said earlier about some young students at school having this massive following around their game. But, it's still really important for the publisher to understand that there is sort of, some experience behind the project, or, that everyone's complete first timer. If everyone's a complete first timer, it means that, well, there's a bit more risk involved than having experienced people involved. And, as I mentioned before, the other thing is, what is it that you're looking for? Is it, funding to finish the game, advances against sales, or is it, technical help like QA assistance, localization assistance, porting assistance, and marketing and sales assistance? I suppose, it's, from a publisher's point of view, you always want to know what they're prepared to give up as far as a percentage of that revenue, but it's always best to hold that to last. That's the first date question, right?
Absolutely. You said before that the publisher scrolls to the last page to just see what kind of money they want in the first place. So I guess the publisher doesn't want to read really a wall of text. So how long should this pitch deck be? Like 4 pages, 5 pages, or
10 pages, 10, 12 pages tops, I think. Any more than that. Look, if you're sort of, about to, trying to pitch to a publisher, a really well-known IP that everybody knows, it's already got a massive fan base. I mean, sure, you can, create a huge pitch deck, because at the end of the day, you've already got their attention. They know they're going to make money from it, and they want to know how far developed you are. But if you've got a new IP, you're a new development team, keep it short and simple. Keep it around 12 pages, maybe 15, 20, absolutely max. And, I know this is a terrible thing to say, but put lots of pictures in there, because people don't like to read a lot.
Yeah, which leads me to the next question. Are there any no-goes of pitching? Of course, I guess, like if you send them a 50-page wall of text and there are no video footage at all and only just text, no pictures and whatever, of course, this is, I guess, a bad pitch. But are there some more subtle non-goes that many people do wrong when pitching?
Yeah, I think that the worst thing that you can do is send people, a PowerPoint presentation with tons of text on it, with a huge wall of text on it. And I've done this as well. So if you get a 12-page pitch and think, oh, this looks really interesting, and then you'll reach out to the developer and say, okay, can you send me the story? What's the story about? Because you really want to know the story. I mean, a lot of people will say to you, hey, it's a game, no one cares about the story. But look, we're in the business of telling stories, so you want to see the story, and you want to understand what the hooks are in the story, and what the level of engagement is with the story, so that you can sort of understand, the way that the developer's thinking about the sort of arc of the game. So initially 12 to 20 pages tops. And then if you can engage them with that, with some, really good pictures, some really good, key statements about, what the game's going to be about, and don't put the story in the pitch, just get the rough outline. Then after that, the next stage is usually the publisher's going to say, okay, well, can you send me that? And do you have a game design document? And that's something we haven't talked about, the game design document. Maybe we should next. But all those things are next. The pitch deck should be really concise, really simple, really trying to capture what the summary is, or what the sort of the key cornerstone is of the game and the game mechanic, and what it's kind of like. And don't be afraid if your game is, kind of, I mean, we have a game at the moment we're about to release at the end of this month, Cathedral 3D, which is kind of very similar to Devil Daggers, and we're not shy about saying, oh, it's just like Devil Daggers, because a lot of people, and if you've read some sort of discussions or papers or analysis of how people buy things on Steam, they often look for games that are like the ones they already like, rather than sort of trying something new. If you are into RPGs, you'll look for other RPGs, or if you're into first-person shooters, you'll look for other first-person shooters. So don't be afraid to sort of, say, hey, this game is like this one, crossed with this one, crossed with that one. Don't be afraid to say that at all, because that's a really, really helpful thing to say. But, keep it simple, and then the follow-up call, or any call from a publisher, or date number 1, date number 2, that's when the publisher should be asking about the story and the game development, the game design document, and more information about how what the milestones are, when you think you're going to be able to deliver a beta version, a gold version, etc. All those questions come later.
You manage a game design document. That's an interesting point. So the publisher, at a certain point of the conversation, wants to see this game design document? Yeah.
No game design document means that it's a big mess. Look, it is like the #1 red flag. If you ask a developer, do you have a game design document that you can share with us? And if they can, and it's really detailed and talks about every aspect of the game, what happens on this level, the script, everything is there. Okay, these guys really know what they're doing. But if there is like this, oh, we don't really have a game design document, or they give it to you and it's sort of kind of, there's nothing in it, then it usually means that they're making it up as they go along. And and that may be fine for some people, but it's kind of also indicative of a sort of an unorganized development program.
Yeah, that's a very great point, because I think especially in the indie industry, there are a lot of people who don't really take that much care of their game design document. It's more like, yeah, we draft in the first place a little bit what we're going to do, but later on, when the program the game develops, we don't really update the document, and we don't really take that much care of it, and it's more like a mess. And it's nice to know that if you're going to reach out for a publisher, your game design document should be top notch, and you should really take care of it. And that's more, it's a door opener, you can say.
Yeah, it's like going to venture capital, asking them to invest in your business. They ask you to see the business plan, and if your business plan is just some, scrap pieces of paper with some things written on it, I mean, they're not going to invest in you. They want to know that you understand everything about it. They want to know that you understand. I mean, from a perspective of game development, the publisher wants to understand that 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 there are going to be sort of major milestones. They want to know that that there is a story arc, that there is some dialogue, that there needs to be cutscenes and where those cutscenes need to be, and there needs to be an ending. And it's not sort of it's not sort of sufficient to sort of go, oh well, we'll write it when we get there. It may change. Things may change, enormously from the first game design document to what the end product is, and that's okay. But the game design document is kind of like a way for a publisher to see how a developer's head works, if you know what I mean. I mean, it's like, is it organized or is it a big mess? when you don't know anybody, when you don't know them personally, and you don't know what their track record is, it's the only thing that you've got. I mean, if Hideo Kojima comes along and gives me a toilet roll with some stuff written on it and says, this is my new game design doc, I'm going to look at him, Hideo, this is fucking genius. Sorry about my French, but this is genius, and where do I sign? But if you're not Hideo Kojima, then you should have something that shows the publisher or whoever you want. I mean, even your some people that want to invest in your studio, that shows them that you understand how it all goes together and what it needs to be.
That's really great to hear that from you, because I think a lot of people in our community don't take the game design document that seriously, and now they hear from an expert. It's really a key factor in getting a publisher to be interested in your game, and it's really not just for the publisher. I think in general for a game development team, it's great to have a good structured game design and document, as this is the whole foundation of the project, where you can always go back to and rely on and check if everything is going according to plan and that you don't get lost. Yeah, it's really nice to see that other people are also are also taking note of this game design document and really take this as a great key factor. Scott, it had been a pleasure to talk to you. I think we could go on for hours like this. I really enjoy talking to you. Do you have any last advice maybe you would like to give our community as a publisher? Otherwise, we would jump just straight to the community questions.
No, I mean, I'd just like to say, number one, firstly, thank you very much for having me. It's been great, and it's been great to sort of share my sort of experience. How useful it is. Well, that you can take it or leave it, I suppose. But yeah, I'm really honoured to have been part of this, and thank you very much for your time. And I suppose I hope to see you all in real life at some point.
Absolutely. As you mentioned, this will maybe take a little bit more time to get there, but yeah, it was a great pleasure to meet you, and really we are very, very thankful for all your information you shared and all your insights. And yeah, so let's maybe give the word to our community. Steve, Falk, are there any questions from the community? Did you gather something from the chats?
So, yeah, our producer had gave me the hint to unmute me before I talk. So, yeah, we have a bunch of questions. But let me first say, was very informative and was a very good interview. So thank you, Scott, for being here. It was really cool. And yeah, I think we should start with the first question. It's from Chronic. From Discord. What do you think about early release versions and early release reviews regarding the impact on how the final game will be perceived and how good it will sell?
There was a time when doing sort of early access games was good, and I mean, certainly Layers of Fear is one that was on early access, and now today it has over 5 million users. So it's been an enormous success, and it was part of the early access. And but recently, I mean, our experience more recently with early access games has not been so great, and it's kind of, in my opinion, I could be totally wrong, and again, it's all dependent on the game, of course. But there was a time where you would say the best time to sell a game is before that it's been released. After it's released, it's gone. There's nothing you can do now. It's up to the general public, and that sort of is almost sort of come full circle again. You can build wish lists, you can build sort of awareness of a game, and then you can release it. And then that act of releasing it, sort of allows pent-up demand to sort of push it along. But in a sort of an early access situation, you've got that sort of that old human attitude of like I'll get it later. I don't need to get it now. It's not really. It's just there. It'll always be there. So at this particular point in time, when there's so many products, I think it's like 28, 29 games releasing every day on Steam. early access, unless there is a really good reason for it, unless you've got a team that's going to be constantly working the community and adding new features to it, really sort of regularly, I would sort of go for a release date rather than sort of early access.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. Our second question is from Enrico. Which KPIs do you use to decide on a project application for publishing, other than it has to be a game that fits your portfolio?
Again, I mean, it's very different. I mean, there's sort of, you have to find a connection to it. I mean, of course, if you're just doing a port and you're doing other just other platforms, as we have done and as we will do again, then obviously we look at the success of the game and whether or not we think that it's going to translate to consoles. But if it's a new IP, really, it just comes down to experience and kind of like a gut feeling whether this is going to be the right game at the right time now. And hey, sometimes we get it wrong as well. There's no sort of scientific formula. If there was a scientific formula to game success, EA would have worked it out a long time ago, and every game of theirs would be a huge success, and they'd be the only publisher on the planet. So, I think, again, I mean, and this is what makes the whole industry really exciting, is that, no one has the formula. If we knew the formula, then it wouldn't be that interesting, and, we'd know whether something's going to be a hit or not.
Yeah, okay. So then I have a question from Chronic again. What was the biggest fuck-up IP your company wanted to publish? Like, what sounded very promising, failed, and how did it turn out? Like, why did it fail at the end?
Yes. So okay. Well, there's various different stuff-ups that I've been involved with proudly in my career, whether it be forgetting to put the age rating on 100,000 units of Doom 2, which did happen, by the way, or sort of getting involved with Elder Scrolls Online and only doing the physical part of it, not the online part. So yeah, there has been some monumental screw ups in my career, and most of them, they kind of sneak up on you and ambush you at the moment you realize, someone's forgotten something. I don't think. It's impossible to sort of. It's a really hard lesson to learn if you really believe in something and you think this is going to be a hit. I really think this is going to work. You convince people to put their money on the table. You invest in this product. Everyone thinks it's going to be great, and then suddenly towards the end of it, you realize, I've made a mistake. There's not an audience here for this game, and it has happened to me before. And it probably will happen again. And anyone that in publishing that has handled a lot of different titles over a lot of time knows that feeling. And there's not a lot you can do about it. And I mean, it's no one's fault. It's just a game that would have been a hit a year ago or 2 years ago because that genre was hot. Has taken too long to develop, to get to market for whatever reason. And you realize, wow, this is awful, and it has happened. I mean, there's just nothing you can do to avoid it. But on the other hand, I mean, there has been games that have done enormously well, and that I've been very thankful to get. And I can give you a good example. In my former life, with Bethesda, I actually spent a whole year chasing Rage. Now, everyone who knows Rage, the first version, knows that it was, it turned out to be a disaster. But over the long term, I think it worked itself out. But that day one number of Rage was horrendous because it seemed that the trailer was all the good parts. But I spent a year chasing that, and because I wanted it so bad, I didn't see Skyrim. I didn't focus on Skyrim at all. it just happened to be another thing on the release schedule. I mean, I knew it was there and it was included in the deal, but I was so focused on Rage. And then when Rage came out before Skyrim, it was a disaster. It was like me staring at pallets and pallets of Xbox and PlayStation versions of this game, and nobody wanted it. Nobody. You know, a couple of months later, you know, Skyrim turned up, and you know, just couldn't get enough of it. It was just out the door. We were reordering. You know, it was a huge hit. So you know, again, it's really, sometimes it just wasn't that obvious. I mean, at that point in time, I mean, if you look at it historically, you could go, oh, well, that was obvious. Everyone wanted Skyrim. Yeah, sure, but you know, ID hadn't had a new IP for like years and years and years, and this should have been huge, but it wasn't quite there. On the other hand, I mean, another one, when I was at Atari, The Witcher literally had been through to every publisher you know, on the planet, and they hadn't got anybody interested in that title. And the only people that would take it was Atari, and I do know how much we paid in advance, but it wasn't that. It was really tiny amount, literally so tiny. It was just crazy. And I know when it came across my desk, I sort of kind of went, no one's going to want this. Everyone wants, you know, World of Warcraft was huge at the time. Everyone wants multiplayer, single player. Nah, no one's going to want this. And yeah, you know, literally we released it, and then it was all just gone within seconds. And you know, we were printing more, and literally our manufacturing couldn't keep up with the demand. So, you know, again, there's been a lot of screw-ups. There's also been a lot of really big, pleasant surprises that, you know, I've you know, had the chance to experience. So I hope that answers your question.
He wrote it in the Discord that he guessed that your long answer to this one question concludes also his next question. And so it was a really a good answer. And he say, awesome mindset, by the way, from Chronic to you.
Thank you, Chronic.
Yeah, so that was my question. Falk, I think the last is your one.
Yes, we have a question from Mr. Odress from the YouTube chat. What would you suggest for writing to publishers containing the same information? Would you suggest a styled marketing mail with pictures and videos, or formal plain text with external links?
Well, as we talked about before, I mean, just, you know, keep it simple, keep it a small pitch deck, link to your video, and that's enough to try and get that sort of initial engagement. I mean, think about, you know, publishers are no different to an audience on Facebook, and you know, it's very different these days to it was like 2 or 3 years ago. I mean, you know, we've all now been, you know, trained to skim content really quickly and make value calls really quickly. So think about it as if you're writing a post on Twitter, you know, that you want people to react to. Keep it short, keep it sharp, and you know, put the pitch deck in there because they want to see the pitch deck, and they, you know, you want to link to a YouTube video to be able to sort of, you know, quickly understand what it is you're looking at.
Yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Thank you.
So I think that was all questions. If you don't have any other, Falk?
No, not at the moment.
Okay, so then I would say thank you, Scott. It was a really cool interview. Really great. Thank you, Valentin, for the interviewer part. So it was really great too. Yeah, so now I think we're finished. To this point, I would say that we are now heading over to Discord. Scott too, so we will be there for, doesn't know how long, but we will there, and Scott will ask answer some questions. You can chat with him, you can chat also with us if you want. And yeah, thank you for thanks for watching our stream. We will see you again in November. And yeah, I think at this point I said thank you again to Ronnie for the producing, for the technical part, and yeah, see you in Discord.
See you in Discord. Bye.
Thank you very much. See you.
Bye.